Hey everybody, I'm Keech Rainwater. I'm the Studio NPL guest mentor for today. And today is all about matte boxes. We're going to talk about matte boxes. What is a matte box and why do you need one? So the most times that you'll see a matte box is in like a professional movie or video production. The big cameras and the real expensive setups. Unfortunately, they don't make one really for an iPhone, but they've got like internal filters and stuff. But when you're doing a professional production, you need a matte box and I'll tell you why. There's really two main reasons why you need a matte box for a professional production. Let's say you're outside and it's really bright outside, and you want to keep the sun from making your lens do a lot of lens flares and things like that, which a lens flare is like where you see a bunch of dots of the sun in the lens and it kind of washes things out and it makes it look kind of ugly. Now, some people like J.J. Abrams, they like to do that. They do that on purpose, but for all practical purposes, you want to keep the sun from washing out your image. And so a matte box, it actually acts as like a lens shade, and it keeps the sun from hitting directly into your lens. And another thing that it does is you can actually put filters into a matte box, and the filters are these square pieces of glass that actually slide in front of the lens, and they're really important for a lot of different reasons. So we're just going to talk about the different kind of matte boxes that we have here, and what they do, and why you need them. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about, now this right here this setup here I have is a professional 16 millimeter film camera that you would use for like a music video or a commercial or even a television show. They used them a lot back in the 80s and 90s, well, way back, but all the way up until about the late 90s, they used a lot of film. And this is an actual 16 millimeter film camera. And this matte box that I have on front of here is what they call a swing away matte box. And the reason they call it that is that, let's say you have to make a lens change. You have to change a lens from like a wide angle lens to a close-up lens. You don't want to have to take the matte box off and put it back on. There's a little pull tab you can pull and it swings away. And you can actually access the lens, change the lens, whatever you need to. And then you can swing the matte box and it locks back into place. That's very handy. And this is on these rods. It's on a rod system. And there's two kinds of rod systems on here. One is a studio configuration, which are wider rods further apart and lower down. And then there's one like this. This matte box is for what they call lightweight rods. And these are closer together, and they actually are higher up near the camera. So this would fit onto here like that on these rails, and once they're on there, then you would put your filters in and that kind of thing. So one of the things that matte boxes do is they rotate. This is what they call a two-stage rotating matte box, and this is the lightweight, like I said, the lightweight configuration, and you're able to actually rotate this. And why would you want to rotate the filter in there? And by the way, the filters slide in these little trays. They fit, the glass filter will fit inside this tray and it will slide into this matte box. And they make some matte boxes that have like 6 stages. There are like 6 different filters you can put in there. And you got to wonder, why would they put 6 filters in a matte box? Well, there's a lot of different things going on when you're doing a professional production. One is light. It could be really bright outside. Now, here's a good example of why you would need a couple of filters in there. Say it's really bright outside and your lens is only set, you've got the lens to where you want to get a shallow depth of field. In other words, where you're seeing things in focus in a very narrow, like a tiny little, everything else is blurry, but the subject is very in focus. In order to get that, you have to be able to open the lens up all the way and get that really shallow depth of field. Now, if you're outside and it's bright sunlight, that will be way overexposed. So you do what's called, you pop in an ND filter. This is a ND6, neutral density is what it stands for. And it's like a pair of sunglasses. It's very dark. You would pop that into the matte box, and that would darken the image enough to where you could actually get that shallow depth of field in a bright sunny day. But otherwise, if you didn't have the matte box, you wouldn't be able to get that shot. So some directors want that. They want that shallow depth of field. They want to, and let's say also you're shooting into a windshield of a car and you want to put a polarizer filter in there, which would take away the reflection of the windshield, and you'd be able to see your actor through there. So, and you could only do that with a matte box, and because it has to rotate. You have to rotate the polarizer filter in order to see the person and get rid of the reflection on there. There's other filters. This is called a grad filter, and the reason they call it that is it's a graduated filter, and in other words, it's basically two filters. It's has a color at the top. Let's just say it's at the top, and then it's clear at the bottom, and it gradually fades down into that, almost like the windshield of your car at the top, where it's kind of blue and it fades down. And why would you want to use that? Well, let's say you're doing a shot where it's a really bright sky, and you want to show the landscape. And you see this in a lot of movies where you have a really interesting looking sky. You pop this filter in, and it will darken the sky just a little bit, or make it a color. Like in this case, it's kind of a tobacco color, kind of brown. You get that kind of dark brown sky, and then the rest of the landscape is clear, but it has to kind of fade like that. So this is called a grad filter. They call it a graduated filter. And most graduated filters are long like this. They're 3 by 4, something like 3 by 4.5. They're wider like this. And then, of course, a lot of filters like this one here are just a regular square. And you can see the difference here, the real wide one and that one. And another good reason for the rotating matte box is that if your camera shot is a little bit at an angle and the sky appears a little bit, not every shot has a perfectly flat horizon, and it's maybe off a little bit. You can rotate that to where the filter actually matches the horizon, and you can shape that shot, and it'll look really good. Another thing I want to talk about is why they call it a matte box. Why is it called a matte box? Well, one of the reasons is we have these things on the front called hard mats. These are called hard mats. And this one, if you'll notice, it has, it's rated for 85 to 100 to 135 millimeter lens. That's what that's for. So when you're shooting through your lens, the higher the number, in other words, let's say it's a 200 millimeter lens or a 100 millimeter lens, you're only going to be seeing a narrow part of the lens through there. So just to keep light from spilling into the glass, they put these hard mats in front. So you'll only be, now this doesn't mean that when you see the image, you'll be seeing a little tiny square. The fact is that the lens is only recording just that much through there, and you want to cut off the light, the rest of the light going into there. So there's a variety of different sizes of these, and they just clip on the front. They're really cool. Here's, as you can see, here's some here. This is 35 to 40, if you'll notice. This actually has a little bit wider, a little bit more narrow, and then this is for like a really wide, these are for wider shots, you see. Clip it on there, and it just helps cut off the light, helps carve the light up a little bit. Here's another kind of matte box here. This is called a clip-on matte box. This actually, so if you have a camera and you're going lightweight, handheld, whatever, you don't have the rods, you want to use a matte box, this thing actually clips on to the front of the lens. And if you see, it has a little, like a clamp on there, and it actually clamps on to the front of the lens, and it also, you can actually rotate. It still rotates. So you get this set the way you want it, and you can rotate the clamp around to where you want it, then retighten it. And this has on the front of it, which is, most matte boxes come with what's called an eyebrow. This is called an eyebrow. And basically it does kind of like what you think, like your eyebrow kind of keeps the sun from it, because always the sun's usually up in the sky, right, coming down. So this helps you cut off the sunlight. If it's like coming too much into your lens, you can actually adjust this and get it to cut the glare off like that. If it's really extreme sun coming into the thing. So this has an eyebrow on it. And it has different size clamps for different size lenses that go on here. It's very sophisticated, and some of these are quite expensive. This here is a matte box. This is a wide angle matte box. Have you noticed how much wider it is than this one? This one here, see the difference? This one's for obviously wider angle lenses. So it reaches a wide view, a wide field of view, and it still rotates just like the other one. And this one actually has a swing away matte box. This swings away. There's your lightweight rods right there, and this actually swings away so you can access your lens. And there's a variety of filters you can get. I mean, these go all different colors. There are different strengths of, like, the ND filters are anywhere from, there's a 3, a 6, and a 9. And so the 3 is a little bit of sort of like light sunglasses. The 6 is a little darker, and the 9 is super dark. So if you're shooting in extreme bright sunlight, you may use 1 or 2 of them to knock that light down a little bit and pop the colors a little bit. Here's another thing that we use in there. Now this is called a donut. These are called donuts. These are little rubber, they're neoprene things. And the reason we need these is, if you look on here, if you notice, there's a gap sometimes between where the lens is and where the matte box is. And light could actually get down inside there and cause a reflection in the glass of your filter. And so you have these donuts on there. These actually go on the lens, and they keep the light from, they kind of seal off the light to keep it from getting in between the matte box and the lens. So it's really, there's a lot to learn about matte boxes and filters and how to use them and the correct way to use them. One of the things that a second assistant or even a first AC would do for a production is, if you put filters in, if you can see or not, I've got some markings on here on white tape. So you would always put whatever filters you have in the matte box. A professional camera assistant would always write on either Velcro or on a piece of tape what filters are in the camera at the time, so that when you change them out, at least you don't have to pull the filter and look and see what kind of filter it is. You've got it written here, so it's just a lot more professional to do that. Here's another thing. What if you don't have a matte box and you're just going lightweight, handheld, and you just don't have that? They actually have a system that you could use for that, and this is called a lens hood. This is just, say this is the lens on the camera, and this is the lens hood to keep the light from causing lens flares. But then you wonder, well, how do you get filters in there? Well, the way this works is there's threads on the front of most of these lenses, and if you notice, this lens hood will screw onto the filter, and the filter screws onto the camera, and you can stack up just about as many filters as you want on this system on front of the lens. And so they're like here's a good example. Here's an ND filter. This would just screw on here, and then you would put your lens shade, your lens hood on here, and there. Now you've got 2 filters in there and the lens hood. So there's a lot of variety of things to know about filters and about matte boxes and lens hoods and things like that. So that's our lesson on matte boxes. Now I think maybe in the future you can do a search, and I think we're going to have some links coming up in the future of how to 3D print your own matte box for your camera. If you have a DSLR camera or some small video camera, to be able to 3D print your own matte box and filter trays and try your hand at it. And I think you'll find that using a matte box will definitely add a level of professionalism to your shots and your cinematography. Just wanted to go through some of the uses of matte boxes and the terminology, and hopefully you'll get to use one someday and make your cinematography really amazing. Thanks for joining me. This is Keech Rainwater, your guest mentor for Studio NPL, and we'll see you next time.